a few months ago, we did a show on the top 10 attractions in Krakow according to TripAdvisor. And we were giving our own critiques of the things on the list. And some of the things are, what you would expect, the Rennek, Oskar Schindler Factory, a couple of other places that, again, you just assume would be there, St. Mary's Church. But we came across one that we didn't know anything about, and we were kind of making fun of ourselves for the fact that, we've been here for so long, never heard of it. It's called the Stained Glass Workshop and Museum. And it was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 on the list, in the top 10, very well regarded. We'd never heard of it. And we kept talking. We moved on, and, we talked about other stuff. In the days after we posted that episode, we got several comments on Facebook from listeners who said, listen, you've got to check this out. It's a great place. And so Josh and I said, okay, we'll go check it out. So we went, and spoiler alert, it's an awesome place. It's fantastic. Josh, we had a good time, didn't we?
We did.
We're going to talk about this in a moment, but we didn't have many expectations. I mean, it's a stained glass museum, but it's more than that. They actually work there. We're going to learn a lot about it today because our guide from that day that we visited the stained glass museum, Gabriela Wierzbicka, is here to walk us through the interesting and colorful world. See what I did there? Colorful world of stained glass. Gabriela, welcome to the KrakCast.
Hi, hello. It's nice to be here.
Okay, let's get the obvious point out of the way. Stained glass is not a topic you talk about very often. Not you. I mean, I think you talk about it every day, but people generally don't talk about stained glass a lot. But it's really, really interesting. Tell everybody the real story behind stained glass.
You mean the history of stained glass as such?
Give us the highlights of the history of stained glass.
Okay, so yeah, you're right. It's a very niche type of craft, so very few people know about its history. But it's actually very interesting. It dates back to, some people say, ancient Rome and ancient Arabic region, when people were putting mosaics in windows or on their walls. But the first stained glass windows, as we know them, today are from around 1,000 year AD from Europe, from Germany, to be specific, and they were already very similar to the ones that we see today and we make today. And what's quite interesting also is that the technique remains quite much the same. So we are still making stained glass windows in a very similar way like people used to do it in the Middle Ages. Yeah,
it seems like some of the tools have changed a little bit, some of the methods updated to modern technology, but the fundamental process is the same, yeah?
Yeah, pretty much.
Now, I have to say you're the only stained glass museum guide I've ever met in my life. I know. Yeah. Tell us, how did you enter the world of stained glass yourself?
Mm-hmm. It was by a chance. I didn't plan to be a stained glass artist when I was younger. It was never my dream or something. But when I finished my university, I started to look for a job. I knew I wanted to work in culture, in art. And then I noticed that they are looking for somebody. And then I went there. And this was the first time I got to learn about anything about stained glass. So I knew as little as you did when you first came to our museum. But from the first time I went there, I just fell in love with everything. And they actually hired me, and then I stayed in there and I learned everything.
So you're not only a guide, and a very good one, by the way. You're not only a guide, but you actually make the stained glass as well. You have a double duty there, right?
Yeah, sort of, yeah.
So tell us, what role do you play in the production process there?
Okay, so since I've been working there for a little bit over 2 years, of course, this is a very short time if you consider how difficult is this craft. So I'm still, you may say I am an apprentice, somebody who still has to learn a lot of things. So I mainly take care of maybe some smaller things. So if you go to our museum and see those beautiful souvenirs, a lot of them are actually made by me. Sometimes I take part in some bigger executions as well. But basically, I do almost everything that I will be talking today about. All those parts of the process, all of those steps I'm familiar with from my own experience.
Now, when we took the tour of the museum, you divided the talk into 2 parts. One part concerned the artistic and design process, and the other part was the technical execution process, actually making the stained glass. And I want to kind of follow the same path here with our conversation today. So let's start with the artistic design side of things. When you get a commission, and we'll talk about that, people order stained glass, it starts with the design phase. And walk us through what that looks like.
All right. So it's may take different forms because what's quite important is that every project is different and every project goes in a little bit a different way. But usually an investor, this is how we call customers usually, somebody who wants to have a stained glass window, let's say, this person comes to us and either brings their own design on their own designer, or they just come and say, I want a window, please design it for me and execute it for me. And it usually takes some time, some meetings, some talking to come up with an idea. How should we do that? How should we do it? What should we do exactly? And then either our designer works on it, and of course, then, they have to have some consultations during this process, or we actually take a ready design from some other artist.
Now, in terms of your investors, as you call them, or customers, am I wrong to assume that the vast majority of the pieces you make are for the church or from some religious institution, or is there a wider variety of clients and investors? Well,
you are certainly not wrong, and it's true that people associate stained glass windows very often with religious art, but it is not always the case. We are also making stained glass windows for private people, just for their houses, and we collaborate with some other artistic, like cultural institutions. We collaborate with other cultural institutions, sometimes with developers. Sometimes we also collaborate with different artists. So we are not only making just commercial projects. This is actually a very important part of our work because we are not only a workshop, we are also a museum. So we consider ourselves to have this mission, this duty to popularize stained glass, to kind of show people this amazing heritage of Polish stained glass. So some of our projects are non-commercial, they are purely artistic.
Just to go back to the church for a minute, if they constitute most of your work, I imagine that your artists must be very familiar with religious themes, religious motifs, religious iconography, this kind of thing. Are they kind of specialized in that?
Yeah, that's true. I think because there's one designer that works in our workshop that is responsible for majority of our designs at the moment. So this is one person. And I think he gained this knowledge and this experience just through working. He has maybe 20-something years of experience.
Staying on the artistic side of things, when we were there, you told us, and I'd like you to repeat it now for our listeners, very interesting how you achieve the amazing range of colors in stained glass. How does that work?
So stained glass is a very particular type of glass. It is not the glass you know from your windows, not the glass you encounter every day in your life. It is very traditionally made, and because of it, this issue of colors is also quite complicated because this glass is colored in the structure. So before even making a flat sheet of glass, they already color it. So this is colored with very natural ingredients very often, metal oxides, minerals, and they are in this very structure of the glass. So stained glass will never fade. Those colors will never go away.
Doesn't fade, no matter what, really?
It never does. If you've ever been in France, if you have seen those beautiful churches, Gothic cathedrals, if you've been in UK, for example, they also have amazing old stained glass windows. Those windows may be dusty, they may be a little bit dirty sometimes, but actually they are not faded. They are still beautiful and vibrant.
So it's like the color is literally baked into the glass.
Yes, indeed.
Like on a molecular level, it is part of the glass, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, now I'm going to get into some deeper water than maybe I should, and I'm looking at Josh. I hope Josh will help me out on this. Again, staying on the artistic and design side of things. I might be missing some terms that I need here, but again, when it comes to the design, you can use artistic styles that make the stained glass look older, maybe much older than it really is. A medieval style, for example. You can also use quite modern styles. Right. And, we get into the area of artistic taste and preferences. There's not a right or a wrong, it's just taste.
Yeah.
Now, when you say you have investors, again, customers who say, I want a stained window, show me something. What are the kinds of, what do you need to, before your designers get to work, what information do they need? Because again, the range of colors, the artistic styles, the size of the individual pieces of glass, there's so many variables. And you can make something that looks like it's 1,000 years old, or you can make something that looks extremely modern. How do your designers know,
which direction to follow?
Exactly.
I think it comes from those talks we have with our investors, because we have to get to know them, get to know their taste, and they very often have an idea in mind. Very often when they come to us, they already know how they want it to look like. And then again, a lot of people like Art Nouveau very much, and it was also this period where Art Nouveau was popular at the beginning, basically between the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century. This was also a period of really big popularity of stained glass windows. So Art Nouveau and stained glass windows are a little bit connected in a way. And a lot of people know that, maybe even subconsciously, because they've seen a lot of stained glass windows in the Art Nouveau style. And they do come back to this style very often. Also, Art Nouveau is very decorative, so a lot of people like it. And we were talking about different investors. If private people, if like individual customers come to us and they want to have a stained glass window, very often they want it in the Art Nouveau style or something quite similar.
They can point to like a benchmark and say, I want something like that. Kind of, yeah. So,
yeah.
Well, no, I was just thinking that, if you commission an artist to, for example, do an oil painting, and, if he makes a mistake, you're not happy with it, you can go back and make a few little changes. But with stained glass, when it's done, it is done. You can't go back and, change details.
Actually you can, but it's very difficult and
involves tools.
Involves tools and time and a lot of swearing.
Right. Now listen, I want to interrupt for a moment here. Sorry, John. I'd completely forgotten this when we were doing the tour of the museum and workshop. But in fact, many years ago, I did a foundation course in art and design, and there was a brief module on stained glass. And in fact, after we'd been to the museum, some memories started kind of surfacing, and I remember that I was particularly fascinated by, of course, the great kind of stained glass windows in the Gothic cathedrals throughout Europe, but also a lot of what had gone on in the 20th century, where there was more of a fine art aspect to it all. And I think what originally triggered this was actually when I was very young and my parents took me to see the rebuilt Coventry Cathedral, which has it has lots of marvellous stained glass windows, one of which, the baptistry window, I think, is by John Piper, which is a very, very celebrated and almost completely abstract window. And then there are, other modern art. I mean, there's a chap, Brian Clark, who's still working today.
He's amazing.
Now, I mean, I have a slight vested interest in this because me and a colleague in England have recently recorded an album, and it is about contemporary artists, and one of the artists that we've done a song about is Brian Clark.
Oh, really? That's amazing.
So if you want some information about that, I can pass that on to you later on. But I don't want to kind of divert too much into promoting my other activities.
So there's a song about a stained glass artist.
Yes.
That is a niche.
Yes, it's called The Dangerous Visions of Brian Clark.
I think it's even more niche than stained glass itself.
This is like hardcore niche, right? Can we link to that song? Is it available somewhere?
I think there is actually. I think he's done a video in Brian Clark's studio. Actually,
all right, we'll try to dig that up.
I'll get that sorted out for you.
Okay, right. So back to the stained glass workshop. Okay, the design is set, the colors are chosen. It's time to get to work. It's time to to bring this idea to life. Where do you start? What's the first step in the actual production process?
Well, we always start with a design that's a little bit smaller, in some smaller scale. So our first design isn't actually the size of the window. It's a little bit smaller. It's just like a picture. Oh. And then the first step is obviously to make it bigger. Then we
make like a mini version.
Yeah, we have a mini version and then the full version.
Sorry, what's the point of the mini version?
The mini version is like a sample, maybe something that we can show somebody, discuss over it.
Double check that's what they want.
Yeah, exactly. And only after we have a green light, we know we are doing that. Mm-hmm. We enlarge it to the 1-to-1 scale.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, speaking of the scale.
Mm-hmm.
You are working with certain measurements, right? Is it possible to say what an average-sized project might look like?
It is very complicated because how should I tackle it? Very often we are doing series of windows, especially if we are talking about the church. So they very often have a couple of windows of the same size. So I'm not sure whether we should consider this the full size of our project, or
individually
every individual one. Yeah.
Well, let's say even an individual, church windows can be quite large. Right?
Yeah, they usually are
a couple of meters by several meters, really. That's this is glass. The glass is I've forgotten how. Take us through the process of how the pieces of glass are kind of bound together with, is it lead?
It is lead,
It
yeah.
is lead.
Yeah.
So the glass and lead, this weighs a lot. I mean, a lot.
That's true.
A typical window could be several hundred kilograms, yeah?
I wouldn't say several hundred kilograms, but definitely it can weigh enough so that 2 or 3 people have to carry it. And I'm talking about grown men.
Let's back up. So there are no kids working in the workshop.
No.
Let's back up here. Okay, so you got the design. I get that each piece is cut individually.
Yes, by hand.
Which takes a long time, I'm sure.
Very long time.
Right?
Yeah.
Colored as needed.
Not colored. Everything is already colored.
Everything's yeah.
So the color.
You cut the colored glass. Sorry.
Yes, glass is colored, and it comes already colored to our workshop, and then we can choose from the colors we have.
So is putting the window together simply a matter of something like a puzzle with melted lead in between the pieces, or is it more complicated than that?
Yeah, in a way, it is like puzzles. Yeah, and very often we even explain it to people like that, especially when we are talking to children, because it is indeed very, very similar. The only thing is that you have a lot of elements, and you can cut yourself with them, and the lead is not melted. Actually, we are using so-called profiles. So these are like long canes of lead profiled in a way that you can actually insert pieces of glass in that. And lead, actually, do you know why we use lead?
Because it's malleable. It's soft enough.
It's one of the softest metals. So without even heating it up, we are able to really make it. Lead can get to any shape we want, almost.
I feel bad. I'm going to backtrack back to color for a moment. I know we're in the technical side of things. So I just remembered something that you explained when we were there about shading, because the pieces of glass, they're not always solid colors. In fact, very often they have very subtle artistic touches that involve shading. Tell us how, for example, on a human face or something like that, how is that done in the workshop? Yeah,
that's true. Very often when you look at stained glass windows, they look like paintings almost, right? There is this 3-dimensional effect to them. And I think this is one of the most amazing and one of the most interesting elements of our work, in fact, patinating, because this is how we call painting on glass, and we do it with very special type of paint, which is called patina. Patina is so great.
So we're painting on colored glass.
Yes. Okay. So if the glass has a certain color, and then we want to give it some shading, for example, if you have a dress or a robe and you want to make it look like there are some folds in the fabric, you have to give it some shading, make it a little bit darker in some places, right? Or lighter in some places, but mostly darker. So this is why we have this very special technique. It's much more difficult than the regular painting. But it has one huge advantage. You can actually melt the paint that we use into the glass.
With heat.
Then with heat, with quite a lot of heat. And then it will just stay forever, just like the basic color of the glass.
All right. Originally, I said we were going to divide it in half, artistic and execution, but I know we're jumping back and forth. Let's jump back. Let's jump forward again, back to the execution, the manufacturing process. So you've got the pieces. They're bound with the lead. What did you call it? The lead
profile.
Profile. And then is that it? Does the final product have to be baked so that the lead binds it somehow, or how does that work?
No. The trick here is that you have to put lead and glass very, very tightly together. So of course, all of the pieces are cut in a way that if you put them next to each other, they just leave no space. basically.
Yeah, you don't want any drafts coming into your church, do you?
One single solid window, yeah.
Yeah, so then when you just put lead in between those pieces, they just hold each other in a way.
All right, so after several weeks or possibly months, is it possible that some projects last for months?
Yeah, it can last even up to years.
Oh, gee,
Several years, yeah.
Let's say after a very, very long time.
It's not like double glazing, is it, where you just phone a guy? And
no, you don't. It's not like that at all. Let's say the project is ready. It's ready to be delivered to the church, for example. How do you package and prepare a stained glass window for transport?
Very carefully.
Yeah, I set you up for that one, didn't I?
Yes, you did. The thing about stained glass is a very important thing, that they always come in so-called panels. So probably if you remember stained glass windows from a church or any other place, there are some divisions in between certain parts of a stained glass window. Just like in a regular window, right? You have one sheet of glass and then some bars, some division, usually plastic nowadays, and then the other side of the window.
It's for structural reasons, maybe.
Yeah. It's for structural reasons, and every window has it. But for stained glass windows, it's even more important because every stained glass window can be taken apart into panels, and they are usually quite conveniently small enough for us to transport, to carry around within our workshop, and then to transport it somewhere else. So we always transport those panels. We always transport stained glass windows by panels. We usually just put a lot of styrofoam between those panels. We build a wooden chest around it, and then we just drive it to a certain location.
Very, very slowly.
Very slowly.
Yeah, quite slowly. Yeah.
Smoothest road you can find.
Yeah,
and
actually,
I guess that the final stage is installing on site at the church or whatever.
Yeah, we also do that from the very beginning to the very end. The last part of our work is just to install it in the church, and then and then it's ready.
Let's talk about the museum itself. It's still, and deservedly so, it is still in the top 10 TripAdvisor things to see and do in Krakow. Still in the top 10. More than 400 reviews. I mentioned earlier how both Josh and I were embarrassed that we'd never heard of it before. We definitely know it now. How do you explain the success and the well-deserved recognition that the museum receives online, among tourists and locals as well?
First of all, I don't think you should be ashamed of yourself that you didn't know our museum,
good.
Because we are actually a very young museum, very new institution. I think that the museum opened to individual visitors maybe 4-5 years ago. But yeah, we gained quite a lot of recognition during this time, and I think it's because of the way we are showing this process, because our museum is not your usual museum where you go and you see some things hanging on the walls and you can just look at them. We engage our visitors into the actual process in a way. We call it a living museum. So you can come there and you go inside of the workshop. By the way, a historical one, because a lot of the interior is an original interior from the beginning of the 20th century. And you can just be immersed in this atmosphere of an old workshop. You can see artists at work, and then the guide explains you how it works. So I think it's quite unusual, and I think it's quite, it's something that people really like.
One of the things that I enjoyed, and I think I can speak for Josh as well, I think we agree on this, is that not only do you get to see the work of gifted hands and gifted artists, but you gain an appreciation of the fact that they're using their hand. This is not some modern method where it's just printed out of a machine. It's old school, and I think in today's world we forget that there was an age before IKEA when people made furniture, and et cetera, et cetera, and it's kind of a window to the past. It's not really a question, it's more of an observation, but just pretend that was a question and talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, you're very right. And actually, this is one of the things I love about this museum and this workshop. This is why I love working there so much, because I feel like by just doing my job, I'm in a way preserving something very important. This very unique craft, but also this kind of way of making things that's not so popular anymore. But I think there is a lot of value to that. And a lot of people, maybe not a lot, but some people coming to our museum, they ask us, why are you not using lasers to cut them, or plotters, or some modern devices? And the first thing is that they are actually not as good as actual human hands and human brains, but also we wouldn't even like to. We really enjoy this traditional way of doing it. And I can also tell you that it's really enjoyable to do something with your own hands. And I think a lot of people forget it nowadays because we have office jobs, because we work with computers so much. We have those jobs that are about calculating things, writing things, processing things, but we are not really making things with our own hands. And this is really relaxing process. And just, I think, it really gives you a lot of pleasure.
If you live here in Krakow permanently, if you're just passing through, if you're maybe planning a trip to Krakow, definitely check it out. See if you can find time in your schedule to check out the stained glass workshop and museum. Gabriela, give our listeners all the practical information they need to find out more information about the museum, as well as hours when you're open and things like that.
Mm-hmm, of course. Our museum is open every day from Tuesday to Saturday. From 11:30 to 6 p.m. And a very important, a little bit tricky thing is that we have only guided tours because, as I told you, it's a living museum, a still functioning workshop.
People walk around just anywhere they want in there. They have they have to be supervised. It's a fact. I've seen some of the tools they use.
Yeah. Plus, there's like just bits of glass everywhere.
Exactly.
That's true.
Yeah, that's true.
So we have guided tours, and an English tour is every full hour, starting with 12 o'clock. So 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and so on. And then a Polish tour is every half past a full hour. So 12:30, 1:30, 2:30, and so on. So if you want to visit our museum, I think it's the best thing to just come, to get to the tour on one of those hours. If you are a little bit early, you can wait in the cafe. We have also a little bit of a cafe space.
Very nice cafe, actually.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. And also, I would like to add something else.
Sure.
I would like to tell something to our listeners. We are engaging in a very interesting project at the moment. It's one of the artistic ones, not the commercial ones. Probably a lot of Polish people listening to this podcast know Stanisław Wyspiański,
sure.
one of the greatest Polish artists. And if you don't know much about him, I really encourage you to go to the National Museum. There is a really nice exhibition of his works right now. And he was also a brilliant designer of stained glass windows, but not all of them were executed during his lifetime. And right now we are executing one of his old designs from the year 1894, and we are really, really excited about it. So if you come to our museum, you will be able to see how actually we are working on this really amazing and really unusual project. So
I think when Josh and I were there, we saw one of the early stage designs for it, possibly maybe a drawing first, or
yes, it's very probable.
Very impressive. Yes, very.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, in general, his stained glass work is fantastic, isn't it? The stuff in the was it Dominican Church?
It's Franciscan Church.
Franciscan Church on Dominikanskie. Yeah, that's
yeah.
The location is just there on Aleja Słowackiego. What's the address exactly over there?
It's Krasińskiego Street, number Krasińskiego. It's number 23.
It's just, if you know where the old Hotel Cracovia is, or the Kino Kijów, it's basically across the street.
Yeah, just across the street.
On the opposite side of the street from the old Kino Kijów. We'll put a link to the website in the show notes. People, do yourself a favor. Go check out the Stained Glass Workshop and Museum. You'll be glad you did. Really, really great way to spend an afternoon. Gabriela, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.